Every morning, we wake up and fall into the same rhythm. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. A cycle that loops endlessly, day after day, and slowly, almost silently, a question begins to whisper through the routine. What's the point of it all? Maybe you felt it too. That strange hollowness. A moment where everything that once seemed meaningful begins to dissolve into static. Where joy feels manufactured. Achievements ring hollow. And life itself starts to resemble a machine. Cold. Indifferent. Automatic. Albert Camus knew this feeling intimately. But rather than crumble under its weight, he stepped into the void with courage and clarity, and found something most never do. An answer. For thousands of years, humanity anchored itself to a story, a grand cosmic narrative in which every joy, every loss, every struggle carried meaning. Religion promised us that suffering was a lesson, death a transition, and purpose was written in the stars. People found peace in this belief, looked to the sky and felt they belonged, that their pain mattered, that life was going somewhere. But then the old world cracked. Science emerged, not as an enemy of wonder, but as a remover of certainty. Darwin whispered that life wasn't molded by divine hands but shaped by evolution, a slow and blind force. The Big Bang suggested that the universe wasn't created with us in mind. It simply happened, governed by math, not morality, disease, natural disasters, suffering. These were no longer punishments or tests. They were meaningless events in a meaningless cosmos. And as science explained more, faith lost its grip. And with it, humanity lost the stories that once made life bearable. Nietzsche saw it before most. God is dead, he declared. Not as triumph, but as tragedy. A warning that the collapse of belief would leave people unmoored, staring into a vast, silent universe, stripped of answers to questions that once defined existence. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What happens after we die? And when those questions go unanswered, when meaning vanishes, what's left is not just a philosophical problem. It's a personal one. Without a higher reason, why get up at all? Why build, love, hope, or strive when the end is always the same? Decay, dissolution, and death. Some people turn away, clinging desperately to illusions, religion, ideology, tradition, anything to convince themselves that the universe still cares. Others descend into nihilism, convinced that nothing matters. Beauty, love, morality, all illusions in a purposeless world. And many more simply escape, burying themselves in distraction, chasing dopamine through screens, money, status, and fleeting pleasures, numbing the ache rather than facing it. But Camus didn't look away. He confronted the absurd, the conflict between our desperate hunger for meaning and a universe that offers none. He called it the most human experience. To scream into the void and hear nothing back. To demand a reason from a cosmos that remains silent. And instead of despair, he chose defiance. Camus didn't just stare into the darkness. He found light in it. He turned to an ancient Greek myth, the story of Sisyphus, a king punished by the gods to roll a massive boulder up a mountain only for it to roll back down, again and again, forever. To most, it's a nightmare, a symbol of futility, hopelessness, endless labor with no reward, a metaphor for our daily grind, our cycles of effort and loss, for dreams that collapse and achievements that fade. But Camus saw it differently. He imagined Sisyphus not as a victim, but as a rebel. A man who, in the face of absurdity, refuses to be broken. Because once Sisyphus accepts his fate, stops wishing for things to be different, and embraces his task, he becomes free. The gods could punish his body, but not his spirit. He rolls the boulder not because he has to, but because he chooses to. And in that choice, in that acceptance, he finds a strange joy. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, Camus wrote. And in that line, he flipped the entire narrative of despair on its head. Because if life is meaningless, that doesn't mean we're doomed. It means we're free. Free from scripts, expectations, and cosmic obligations. Free to create our own purpose. If life came preloaded with meaning, we'd be trapped by it, bound to a divine blueprint. But in a world where meaning doesn't exist unless we create it, we're liberated. We can choose what matters. We can love not because it serves a higher goal, but because it feels real in the moment. We can create, not because it lasts forever, but because the act itself is beautiful. That's the heart of Camus's absurdism. Not to pretend life has meaning, not to wallow in despair because it doesn't, but to rebel against that meaninglessness by living anyway. To laugh, love, and create despite the void. To find joy not in a grand purpose, but in the freedom to be alive. Camus believed that every act of joy is a form of rebellion. When you laugh knowing that nothing lasts, you defy the absurd. When you love knowing it will one day end, you rebel against fate. When you take risks, dream boldly, explore deeply, not for status or legacy, but just because it is a statement. I am here, and I choose to live anyway. And from that rebellion, meaning is born, not given from above, but made by us. Camus didn't stop at theory. He offered a way to live. Stop overthinking. The universe isn't keeping score. You fail? So what? The boulder rolls down either way. Lost your job? The stars don't notice. Made a mistake? You're human. Keep going. Don't wait for the right time. There isn't one. Don't paralyze yourself with fear. The world doesn't owe you clarity. Act. Move. Experience. That's how we revolt. And when you stop obsessing over what things mean, you start feeling them for what they are. Every moment becomes lighter, more vibrant. And instead of asking, why should I? Camus tells us to ask, why not? Why not start that project? Why not take that risk? Why not live boldly, freely, rebelliously? Because the truth is, the boulder will always roll back down. That's life. But if you can smile as you walk back down the mountain, if you can find joy not in reaching the top, but in the climb itself, then you've already won. Camus' message is not that life is easy or pain is an illusion, but that freedom begins where illusion ends. The day we stop waiting for life to give us meaning and instead start creating, it is the day we truly become alive. So live fully, laugh loudly, love deeply, create, explore, and embrace the chaos. Not because life has a purpose, but because you are here. Because the universe may be silent, but you are not. And that, Camus believed, is enough. One must imagine Sisyphus happy.